Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the session supporting all students post-COVID. My name is Craig Stevenson, and I'm the principal of the Thomas E. Bow School, which serves grades 4, 5, and 6 here in Glassboro, New Jersey. I am joined by two members of my team, the Thomas E. Bow School team, Miss Lisa Rencher, who is a special education teacher here in our district, and Dr. Molly Ann Light Stevenson, who is our SEL counselor. Just a little bit of an overview of what our agenda for this session is. Our goal is to help you by sharing some of the ideas that we've implemented, develop a plan to meet the SEL and academic needs of all students post-COVID. And I emphasize again, all students. So how do we do this? We need to plan for post-COVID student needs. We need to consider the academic considerations that we need to have in place for all of our students and for those students who need more intensive supports. We're going to discuss an overview of the school-wide SEL supports that we've implemented here at the Thomas E. Bow School and will continue to implement into next year. We're also going to review our INRS process and protocols, and we'll also discuss some of the intensive SEL interventions that we are implementing to support our students. Before we look ahead to next year, I think it's important for us to look back at the past year and a half and all the challenges that we faced. I'm sure that the challenges we faced here at the Bow School are not unique to our building, but just to review some of those things, obviously we had a substantial disruption to the normal school experience for our students. At the outset of the pandemic, here at the Bow School, we had some connectivity issues, especially during the early stages. And I'm sure other schools have experienced the same issues. We also had an adjustment period for all of our staff and students with the implementation of new technologies and new technology platforms. We have a very tech-savvy staff here at the Bow School, but even at that, there was still an adjustment period at the beginning. We also had, for all of our students, and especially for those students transitioning from the Bullock School, our 4th grade students, a really non-traditional orientation, and some significant challenges were faced as a result of that. We also had the challenge really throughout the year with hybrid learning of ensuring that we were simultaneously meeting the needs of our in-person students as well as our virtual learners. And the impact on our students, all of our students, is quite significant. Of course, one of the things we experienced is an engagement gap. We had some students who, quite frankly, during the time of hybrid learning, some students who excelled. And we had some students who struggled mightily. We obviously had some students who we experienced significant attendance issues with them. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the interventions that we put into place to support those students. And of course, a lot of our students, especially those students working remotely, there was a sense of isolation, but even for those students in person, because we weren't congregating for school-wide assemblies in the traditional sense, because students weren't moving to special areas classes, they weren't interacting at recess and in the cafeteria, all of our students have experienced a sense of isolation. And something else to point out as well is, of course, there was really a learning loss across the board, but one of the things we all need to consider is that that learning loss was disproportionate. There are certain students within our building who have struggled more so than others. And the significance, how deep that learning loss is something that we are likely only beginning to fully grasp and understand. And it's going to be a significant task for us moving forward to identify those gaps and ensure we have supports in place to help the students. I'll look ahead. Post-COVID concerns, obviously for all of our students, there's going to be a reacclimation, readjustment period as students readjust to quote, normal school, a full day of school, fully in-person school. And we recognize that at the outset of the year, a significant amount of our time and energy is going to have to be devoted to ensuring our students are set up for success by helping them readjust. We also understand and realize that a lot of our students have experienced COVID-related trauma. And of course, the extent of that trauma varies from one student to the next, but we need to ensure that we're assessing the impact of that trauma experienced. And we recognize that moving forward, that there's going to be an emergence of more substantial SEL needs. We're only really probably beginning to understand the extent of those needs. So that's going to have to continue to be a focus for us moving into next year. We need to assess the scope of the learning loss for all of our students, and we need to examine that evidence again of disproportionate learning losses. Now, if we're not doing these things and if we're not putting effective supports in place, what we're concerned about will happen is that we'll see a significant increase in referrals to INRS and CST as a result of evidence of learning loss and manifestation of COVID-related trauma experienced by students. So we've already seen this, and we are working hard to ensure that we have supports in place so that students aren't being referred without implementing other measures, and we'll talk about that. So post-COVID considerations, we need to ensure that what is prompting a referral is not a result of learning loss. It's not, we'll talk more about the COVID slide in a few moments here. We need to proactively discuss with our school leadership team, with our staff, and ensure that, again, let's examine all the supports we have in place and ensure that we are doing everything we need to do for our students before that student gets funneled through the INRS or the CST process. The importance of ensuring effective Tier 1 strategies, that's a big piece of that. We need to ensure that we have in place school-wide interventions, school-wide strategies that is accounting for all learners. And we're talking about their academic needs as well as their social emotional learning needs. And I believe this is something that we do very well here at the Bow School. And in a few moments, Dr. Light will share some of the details of the social emotional learning supports that we have in place. Identifying students who need additional support beyond Tier 1 and delivering that support, we need to make sure that we're effectively identifying those students who need additional support and ensuring that we connect them and deliver the appropriate support that they need. This is a little diagram here just to sort of provide us an overview of what a support structure should look like. Obviously, we need to ensure we have in place, again, those school-wide SEL supports. We need to ensure that we have instruction that is planned and implemented with all learners in mind. Now, of course, those supports will work for the vast majority of our students, but not for all of our students. And then it's a matter of correctly identifying those students who are in need of more intensive support. We have certain additional supports in place here that have proven successful for us. We have a homework clinic for students after school, students who need a quiet place to work after school with support from our teachers. Homework clinic is an appropriate support for the students. We, of course, have a BSI program here. We also have an extended school day program to provide support for those students who are in need of basic skills instruction. We have a number of English language learners here at the Bow School. We have an ESL program in place to support them. We're going to talk a little bit more in a few moments about our social emotional learning small groups, more intensive SEL supports for students in need. We also have implemented personal learning advocates for those students in need of an additional person beyond their counselor and teacher who will meet frequently with the student to provide a variety of supports for them. And something we very successfully implemented this year as well, and will continue to next year, is a home visit task force. And we'll talk more about that in a moment, but it's proven successful for those students who are attendance issues. Obviously, our INRS team will receive referrals for those students in need of more intensive supports. and the INRS team will identify those students who may need to go through the 504 process or through the child study team referral process. So we talked a little bit about those tier 1 supports. We want to make sure that we have curriculum and instruction that is planned and implemented with all learners accounted for. I think one of the simultaneous sessions going on right now as you're watching this is the UDL session. And we right now here at the Thomas E. Bow School are participating in some training through the NJIETA program. And our focus is on universal design for learning. And our plan is with the group of 10 Bow team members who are trained in UDL, we will be turnkeying that information to the rest of our staff next year. That'll be a huge priority for us. And it is just, this seems cliche, but we need to ensure that we're planning and implementing engaging classroom instruction. And as challenging as the past year and a half has been, we know that there are certain elements to hybrid instruction that we will retain. There are certain technology platforms and programs that will remain. So what all of us should be engaging in right now is reflecting upon what has worked to engage students in the past year and what might continue as we return to in-person learning next year, fully in-person learning. Additional considerations, obviously, we want to ensure that we're differentiating our instruction to meet the needs of our students. We will be implementing next year here at the Bow School a Bulldog block for all grade levels. I'm not going to call it response intervention. We're not there yet. It's not an RTI program yet, but we will utilize a block of time in our schedule to provide map-informed small group instruction. And that's for all of our students, from our students who are in need of some basic skills instruction to those students who are in need of enrichment experiences or accelerated experiences. And of course, this is a point I always like to emphasize to my staff, is that accommodations should be implemented at the tier 1 level. A student does not require a 504, an INRS plan, or an IEP for us to implement accommodations. This is all about getting to know our students and identifying what their needs are and implementing accommodations to support those needs. Dr. Light will go into more detail on our social emotional learning program here, but what I want to emphasize is, again, we have school-wide programs in place. We have a culture and climate committee who meets frequently to often plan those school-wide programs. SEL is not something that should be occurring in isolation. It's part of our culture here. We're implementing school-wide programs. All of our teachers are conducting morning meetings. Dr. Light is overseeing the program, but ultimately implementation is also occurring at the classroom level with morning meetings, and our teachers are provided with weekly plans for them to implement in those morning meetings. And then we have, of course, in place as well, tier 2 and tier 3 supports for those students who need more significant supports. And just touching on a few other additional things here, obviously family engagement is critical. We have a parent advisory committee here at the Bow School. And one of the things I've learned from this past year is the possibility of expanding participation in that committee by offering that virtual option. And we also, in the past, at times have taken our parent advisory committee off-site and into the community, and the effort, to ensure we have as much involvement, participation, and all stakeholders represented. Our orientation programs and our back to school night, we've been doing a lot of thinking about what virtual components might remain. Our parent teacher conferences, I think what we learned this year is by having a virtual option is we have expanded parent participation, so we will keep that as an option moving forward. And we also have in place action plan meetings where we have parents and guardians involved in the decision-making process for our students in need of more intensive supports. 6 additional considerations that I'm, as a principal, suggesting to other school administrators and school leaders is ensure that you maintain your committee structure. We have an attendance committee that meets frequently, a school climate safety team that meets frequently to plan our tier 1 interventions and to also plan our tier 2 and 3 interventions and identify those students who need those more intensive supports. So this time, I do want to turn it over to our SEL counselor, Dr. Light, who can touch on the variety of SEL programs that we have in place in post-school.
Hello, everyone. So I am Dr. Light. I am the social emotional counselor here. And like Mr. Stevenson has been saying, we are really proud of our SEL program here. We have a very strong initiative that starts with our whole school. It's translated into the classroom. From there, it goes to our families. From there, it goes right out to the community. There are a number of initiatives that we do here in school that our community is also aware of. So I think for next year, providing the supports for post-COVID, we really want to think of or be prepared to provide very effective tier 1 school-wide initiatives and supports so that we can limit the amount of tier 2 and tier 3 supports that we need. So our SEL points of emphasis that we really look for when we're creating our SEL programs and initiatives and supports are to address the whole student. So we ask, ourselves about our students. Can they demonstrate self-care? Do they have a healthy balance regarding, the well-being of their whole selves, physically, mentally, and emotionally? Do they have self-confidence? Are they thinking that they can do something? Do they have that mindset, that growth mindset? Their coping and safety skills. So how are students coping with problems and issues, especially all of the changes and adjustments that they're having to make now? Are they able to adapt? How resilient are our students? And of course, our social skills, which is going to be a ginormous point of emphasis as we begin again in September for students who have not been in school all year, who have been joining us virtually, for those students who have been back in school but have experienced an entirely different set of social norms. So how are our students behaving appropriately in the environment or the situations that we're in? So to do that, again, we have our tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 supports. Our tier 1, we provide those supports for the whole student. And then our tier 2 is kind of more targeted for small groups. And then our tier 3 provides those more individualized supports. So right now, Miss Lisa Rencher is going to talk to you about some of the INRS protocols that we have here at Bow.
Hi, everyone. I am going to, as Dr. Light said, talk about INRS, which stands for Intervention, Referral, and Services Team, which is a group of different staff members in our building that get together monthly with classroom teachers, parents, guardians, and discuss certain students that classroom teachers, special area teachers, or parents might have concerns about how they're performing within the classroom or at home. In typical years pre-COVID, we would set up a process for referrals from classroom teachers that we had to follow before a student became part of the INRS process. And we're here just to, as I said, to help the classroom teachers, everybody in our building with the students. So what we do is, if you can go to the next slide. Our purpose is to make sure that the students are successful both sides in the classroom and out of the classroom. Our team consists of several different members, which includes our vice principal, who is our team leader. We have a child study team case manager who is there to represent the child study team, deal with any child study team issues, provide insight and guidance for the INRS team, and also resources for families of the students. We have our guidance counselor, who is a team member that is there to help with any behavior concerns or any other concerns that might be brought to the attention of the team, and also to provide any services and resources for the family within the building, within the town, within the county for the families. We have Dr. Light, who is our SEL counselor, who is there to help with our SEL concerns, for the families, for the students, and for the teachers, and then also to provide resources within the community and within the county for the families. We have representatives from classroom teachers and special education teachers that are on the team to provide insight and some information from the viewpoint of a classroom teacher. We have our school nurse as needed if any of the students that we happen to be discussing have health issues. We have our ESL teacher there if any of the students or the family members speak a foreign language and they need assistance with that. And then we have the referring classroom teacher who might be bringing a student up to the INRS team. Now, moving into post-COVID next year, we have, as Dr. Light and Mr. Stevenson mentioned, we have some anticipated needs for the 2021 and 2022 school year. There may be needs that we haven't even thought of yet that might arise. But what we have to do as an INRS team is to determine, are these educational needs, such as a learning loss, which could be either a COVID slide or a COVID slowdown. And the difference between a COVID slide and a COVID slowdown is that you could think of a typical COVID slide kind of as the summer slide that students experience once they leave school in a typical school year in June and don't return until September and haven't picked up a book to read independent reading or done any of the typical schoolwork. So there might be a slight regression or a slide backwards in their ability to perform academically from how they could perform in June to how they're performing when they return in September. The COVID slowdown is students stay at the same academic level or achievement that they were when the pandemic first hit, when we went out back in March of last year, and they have not shown any improvement. So that's what a COVID slowdown is. So our job as an IRS team is to determine, is the academic issue due to COVID slide or COVID slowdown, or is it the learning loss, or it is an actual academic issue that a student would have had even pre-COVID? We think of, because the students either have been attending school totally virtually all year or attending through the hybrid model, there might be a reduced stamina for student workload or reading ability, reading stamina. So these are some things we need to consider looking into next year. Students are also going to be out of practice just being a student in a classroom and going through the typical full school day. In our school, we've only been attending, while we've been in person, a half a day in person. So the students have to increase their stamina for not only reading, for doing the workload, but also being able to be in that classroom environment all day. Then we have to think, are these any of these needs social emotional, as Dr. Light was talking about? Loss of social interactions because they've been at home, either attending school totally virtual or coming part-time through a hybrid instruction, but not being able to get out as they normally would, see their friends, see their peers, see their classmates. Family health concerns go into that. All this causes anxiety and stress amongst our students. Trauma, we have to think about trauma and look at it in a different way than we have in previous years. Trauma related to COVID. So this could not only be dealt with the school being shut down, attending school virtually. Other traumatic events might include their family members having lost their jobs because of COVID, which is a loss of family income. Family members having health crises that might be due to COVID or other related issues that they might not have had to deal with pre-COVID. And then there might be some type of disruption within the family. The family may have had to move, relocated where they're living. Those types of things we have to think about with our students. And also a decreased or reduced access to educational resources during the pandemic. Because of families dealing with this trauma or other issues, education has been put down on the hierarchy of needs for the family because they're dealing with, as I said, the health issues, the educational issues, thinking about housing, food, healthcare, All of these put student learning at the bottom of what the family has been thinking about during this almost year and a half now. So those are some things INRS has to think about. Now, typically the process involves a classroom teacher, when they get their students in September, taking time to get to know their students, find out how the individual students in their classroom learn and work best. If a classroom teacher feels that there's a concern, what we're asking them to do come next year is to start documenting that concern. And immediately, as Mr. Stevenson and Dr. Light said, implement those tier 1 interventions and supports right away within the classroom. Keeping documentation, collecting data as far as the work production, any test scores, and data on the interventions that are being put into place in the classroom and how successful those interventions are. This year coming up, we're asking that if a teacher feels that these interventions have not been successful, that they wait until November 1st before they refer a student to the INRS team. This way, it gives both the teacher and the students time to reacclimate themselves to being back into school full day, 5 days a week, adjust to being back around everybody, getting into our normal classroom routine, and allow time for those school-wide SEL and other interventions to kind of take place and see if they will help the student. If after that time, the classroom's teacher still has a concern, they're to refer the student by November 1st. And then our team leader, Mrs. Marchese, will review the referral and determine if we should set up a meeting with the INRS team. And then all the members will come together at a meeting, including the classroom teacher, parents, and any other staff members who have contact with that student. We will hold our first meeting and we will discuss the concerns of the classroom teacher, other staff members within the building, if they see the same concerns, for example, in music and gym and art. We will look at the data that has been collected by the classroom teacher. We'll look at the interventions that were put in place in the classroom and decide, were they successful or does more intervention needed? At that time, the INRS team will determine and parcel out this referral and determine, is it a true INRS concern? Is it an academic, behavior, health issue, and maybe a 504 plan needs to be implemented? Or is this something that needs to be sent off to the child study team? And that's where our case manager from CST serves an important role on the intervention team. We'll determine, is this an academic gap due to the COVID slide? Or is this a student who has some true academic issues and concerns that even pre-COVID might have been there? And that's why data is very important. Looking at their past test scores, MAP scores from previous years prior to school shutting down in March of last year. Or is this a non-academic concern, whether it's a behavior issue or something that could be addressed through SEL and Dr. Light? Once we determine what type of problem or concern we're looking at, then the team will come up with a plan together for the student. And then we'll create goals, measurable goals. It's important that they're measurable so that we have some way of knowing whether the interventions that are put in place are going to be successful or not. And they'll be implemented either in the classroom, in the special areas, within the lunchroom, out on the playground, anywhere that we feel that these interventions will be successful and help the student. A case liaison will be assigned to serve as a liaison between the student, the classroom teacher, and the INRS team. And the liaison's job is to meet with the classroom teacher, see how things are going in between our meetings, from our initial meeting to our next follow-up meeting, see if there's any help the classroom teacher needs. And at that time, we'll also set a date for a follow-up meeting. And it usually will occur between 4 to 8 weeks after our initial planning meeting. And at that time, we'll look and see how successful the interventions were. Are we going to continue with those interventions, or do we need to come up with new goals and new interventions to put into place? Follow-up meetings are held throughout the school year as needed. And then at the end of the year, we always do a review of all of our cases that were brought to the INRS team. And we determine, is the student going to remain in the INRS for the following school year? Have they met all their goals? Has it been successful? And can we safely remove the students from INRS? Sometimes students will be put on what we call a watch list. They're ready to be removed, but we want to just make sure the following school year that when they start the next year out, that they're going to continue and be successful. So we'll put them on what we call a watch list, and we'll just check in with the next year's classroom teacher, see how they're doing, and see if we need to bring them back into the INRS process. Or do we recommend that the student needs to be seen by child study and possibly tested and see if there's something else going on? An intervention document will be created that is shareable for the next year's classroom teacher and everyone on the INRS team, which will include the goals and interventions that were worked on during the current school year. So it'll be ready, available for the next year's classroom teacher. And next year's teacher will be notified of how long a student has been in the INRS process, because sometimes we get students that come over from an earlier school that started INRS in that school and continue through our building. The teacher will know, as I mentioned, about the current goals and interventions that are in place, what works and what has not worked, and the outcome at the end of the year review. And already a meeting will be set up for the following school year, and the teacher will know when that meeting will take place, the day and the time. And then something else that we provide our classroom teachers is something we call Fast Facts. And here's a copy of the Fast Facts form. And it's very simple for the classroom teacher. They can look at one glance, one sheet of paper. It lists all the current goals of the student, the interventions that have been put in place, what has worked for that student and what has not worked for that student. This way, when the classroom teacher, the next year's teacher, starts out with the student, they're not starting over at the beginning again and trying interventions that already were found to be unsuccessful. They can start the new school year out working on interventions that were successful, working for that student, and just continue right on as if we never left off in June.
Okay, so just to kind of circle back to our SEL initiative here and our Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 strategies and interventions that we provide for our students. So this school year, when we started out, we knew that there was a need to support our students in a different way than we initially were, previously had. So we started off with a screener, and we used a COVID-specific screener that asked students how they respond to stress and worry when thinking about or experiencing COVID. And with those results, we were able to kind of identify students who would need more tier or need additional support. So that would be in Tier 2. But we also use a variety of measures to really continue to check in with our students and survey to see how they're doing, what they need. Right now, we are currently in the process of meeting with every single student in this school just before they leave for summer break, and to, see if what kind of experience they had this year. Do they learn better in person in a hybrid setting, or did they feel more comfortable in virtual? So we have those students on the radar to try to acclimate better, back into school in September. We use something that's called a Penn State Worry Questionnaire. I hope to use it next year. It's just a basic 10-question survey that just talks to students about, in the previous 2 weeks, how are you feeling? How much are you worrying? Are you stressing? We're using a check-in survey now with our students that have about 10 questions that, again, address the entire school experience, some things that they're looking forward to, if they need help with anything at home or in school before they leave. We also have a resilience questionnaire to see how well our students are adjusting to all the changes. And then we sometimes use an SEL competency, which covers all the competencies of social emotional learning, be it self-awareness, self-regulation, relationship skills, communication, and positive decision making. So for our tier 1 school interventions, we always start with what we call a morning zone check-in. So here at Bow School, we use the zones of regulation because we believe that if we can teach our students to identify how they're feeling, then they can then use a strategy that works to help resolve that feeling. So since we started out virtually, our students did a morning zone check-in on a Google form. This is just a Google Doc copy, just so you can see how it would work. The students log in every morning to the Google form. They will check off which zone they're feeling. They check off why they're in that zone. They can check a variety of boxes. And then the results go instantly to their homeroom teacher. So that homeroom teacher can then see how the students are feeling as they're coming in for the morning. And if there's any students that might be in the blue, yellow, red zone, they can keep an eye on them and also refer them to one of the counselors here. So this is really helpful to, help students use their self-awareness skills and figure out how they're doing. So the Bulldog Hotline is something that we use to pretty much connect with all of our families here at Bow. So earlier I had talked about how our social emotional learning kind of runs through from our school to the classroom, to family, to the community. This is just one way that we thought it was important to support our families at home. We call this the Bulldog Hotline. Again, this is used as a Google form, and students and families can actually fill this out. They can choose how they're feeling that day. They can make sure they put a contact number or an email, and then what they need help with. So you'll see on the list, it's not always things that are just academic that we provide here at Bow. They might need help with food or help with housing or to see a doctor, to speak to a nurse. So I would get this, it goes directly to the counselor, so it's confidential. And then from there, I can kind of source it out and be able to provide those families with things that they need. Some of our other tier 1 interventions that we did this year, we implemented our SEL Wednesdays. For a while, we were all virtual to start the school year, and then we moved to a hybrid schedule where we still had our Wednesdays at home. So we took advantage of the beginning and the hybrid schedule to use what we call the SEL Wednesdays. So this was facilitated by myself, Mr. Stevenson, and also our special area teachers. We all had a group of maybe 30 to 40 kids, and we met with them every single Wednesday morning. The students were mixed to kind of initiate, social interaction like they would during a regular school day. They could mix with kids from different classes and grades. And the topics that we learned were based on the results of our COVID questionnaire in the beginning of the school year, as well as the most recent current events. So we touched on things like resilience, speaking up, how to communicate, how to ask for help, how to adjust to change, the Black Lives Matter movement and being, standing up for your rights, and the Capitol incident. So just letting students say how they feel and learning how to have a disagreement or opinions in a healthy way. We also implemented open office hours. So when kids are in school, it's easy to get in contact with a guidance counselor or myself. You can just come to our office or ask your teacher to call, but obviously in a virtual setting that wasn't possible. So our counselor and I set up these open office hours through a Zoom link where students could come every day at 2 different times, once in the morning and once more towards the afternoon, and speak with us if they wanted to. Most students came just to say hey and tell us that they missed us, and tell us about all the good things that are going on and things like that. So it worked really well to support all of our students and kind of make them feel like a sense of normalcy was still happening, even though school was looking very different. So as I mentioned before, we are in the middle now doing our entire student population check-in. But mainly our tier 1 supports are mapped out in a calendar. So this is our 2021 calendar. So there's also a link to a 2020 calendar that you guys will have, you'll be able to access, but it's pretty much, you can see the difference of how we were still able to implement the activities from 1920 over to 2021 and still do them virtually. So we have it mapped out for every month. We celebrate national days in America, Clean Out Your Desk Day, the Great Kindness Challenge, Friend Frenzy, where students did like a kind of like a kid speed dating, if you would, where they met different kids every minute and talked about different conversations. World Compliment Day. So a lot of our Tier 1 supports that happen school-wide, they are meant for students to really encourage that pro-social kindness, calmness within our school, and a sense of belonging and community. Just recently, when we were doing our student check-ins, I had a 4th grader who was new to our school, and he's been to 2 other schools before this. And I said, you know, hey, we always started off with, how was your school experience this year? And his answer to me was, it was great. And I was really surprised by that, because some of the kids were saying, it was okay, it was weird, it was fun, but he said it was great. So I said, tell me more. And he said, well, this is the calmest school that I've ever been at. I feel safe here. I feel calm. I feel like I belong. I feel like I'm making friends, even though I can't really play with my friends or talk to my friends. So I really thought that was just a great reflection on all the work that we're doing here, that a new student in this type of environment in school day said, it's been great. And he used the word calm. So, you know, we've been teaching that word a lot during our SEL Wednesdays and our Tier 1 lessons, just how to remain calm during times of stress and worry, and how to remain calm when you feel like you are being, when there's injustices going on, or when you feel like you're being attacked or you want to speak up, how to do that calmly and respectfully. So I really just was very proud of that student for using that word. So as we're moving to our Tier 2, we do our check-in, check-out system. So our check-in, check-out is for students who need just a little bit of support and just some go-getter mentality from some of our administrators. They would check in with those people every day in the morning. They usually work on a point system where they try to earn different points for different goals throughout the day. And usually those points will earn them like an incentive or a prize. Sometimes it's a trip outside or extra or homework pass, but it's something that is positive for our students that they work towards without losing points or having a negative reinforcement. So it really works well for those students who need just a little bit of support. We also have many small groups, which are very popular and successful here. Most of these groups are open to all students. Well, all of them are open to all students, but some of them have some specific requirements that are needed to join the group. So we start with Circle of Friends, and that's open to all students. It runs for about 4 weeks. It's every other week for about a half hour, and students work on making good friends and keeping good friends and developing those social skills and having social awareness. We have a fish group, which is a families in separate homes. So it could be single parent families, it could be parents from separation or divorce. And those students come and they work with each other and talk about what it's like to be in that type of home and what they do to kind of make it through the day and to cope with it. Then we have our Girl Power and our Supermen, which really focuses on that self-awareness and self-confidence and how to feel great about yourself and self-regulation, like managing that stress and that negative self-talk that sometimes they have and peer pressure. And then we also have a majority of groups. We have a mindfulness group that kids like. We have a group for kids whose parents are incarcerated. We have a good grief group for kids who have lost a parent or a sibling or a loved one. And then we also even have a pet loss group because at this age, a lot of kids, I mean, even adults, they consider their pets their family, and it can be really difficult for kids to kind of navigate that. But those groups are very successful. I think last year we had over 200 students sign up, and a majority of that was for our Circle of Friends and Supermen and Girl Power. But I mean, those are the skills that we are really targeting here with our SEL program, is those social skills and kindness. And something really interesting too, when I was interviewing our 6th graders now, I had asked them about bullying and conflicts. And since you've been here from 4th grade and you're leaving now in 6th grade, do you feel like bullying here has gotten better or worse? And all of them said, oh, I think it's gotten so much better. Kids are kind. I think by the time I started in 4th grade until I'm in 6th grade, we learned how to be kind, and we learned the right thing to do and how to stand up for each other. So, I mean, I feel really proud that our students are feeling safe here and feeling confident enough to say that. And then as we look to our tier 3 supports, we do have our personal learning advocates like Mr. Stevenson talked about earlier. Also our home visit task force, which again has been very successful. And then our individual counseling that myself and our other counselor also do. So looking ahead to next year, so all of our tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 will continue with just a little bit of changes. So our survey is going to change. Not sure what we're going to use yet, but we will use something that, asks students to address what their thoughts are coming back to school, what their worries are, what their stress is about having to pretty much restart for a lot of our students. And then based on those results, our small groups might change a little bit. I think the ones that we have now will remain, but we will be adding a few other ones based on the needs of our students. And I think that's something that, again, we do really well here. We do really well with listening to the needs of our students, gathering data about our students, and then providing those changes and needs specifically for our students. Our hotline will stay in place. Our SEL Wednesdays will pretty much stay in place. However, we'll use a lot of our Bulldog block time to reinforce our SEL skills as well as our health class. Something new we're going to do next year is have kids on an attendance plan. So normally this year, and I'm sure schools everywhere had a large problem with attendance. In a pre-COVID world, those kids who miss so much of the school may be retained or, something else, but we can't really do that because we don't know what they were experiencing, why they couldn't attend, what is happening in their life. So we have marked our students to be on attendance plans as soon as they start school. Set attendance goals for them, make sure the parents are aware, the kids are aware, so that we make sure that they get here because we need them here. We also want to set up a before school type program for kids to come and have fun, to exercise, to use their minds, to be creative, so that some of those kids who are attendance issues can get here and stay here. Using more brain breaks, right? Use of our outdoor spaces now that, we have COVID and we need to keep our distance and abide by safety protocols. We have a great turtle garden here, so kids can use Turtle Town. We have a few garden courtyards that we've been restoring and cleaning up. So those will be things that will change a little bit, but mostly we have a great foundation of tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 SEL supports. And then here's just a couple of references for you. So the zones of regulation is what we use here. And then we have 2 SEL resources, the Castle website, and then the Rutgers SEL lab that just have some great parent and family and school resources for you. So I'll turn it back to Mr. Stevenson to close us out.
Thank you, Dr. Light. Thank you as well, Mrs. Renscher. We're very proud of the different programs and supports that we have in place for our students here. I just want everyone to know that if at any point you have any questions or need any support, you can reach any one of us. I have our email addresses here. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or would like us to share some of our resources. We look forward to working with all of you to ensure that we are supporting our students as they make their way back to our school in September. And again, thank you for your attention. And it's been our pleasure to meet with you today. Thank you very much.